For lesson 2, we are going to focus on techniques for selecting artwork. So we're going to talk about the selection tools, we're going to talk about alignment tools, grouping and ungrouping, as well as working in isolation mode. We're also going to take just a slight look at working with the layers. So we are going to create a document completely new today, so there's nothing to download from the module. We are going to create a little garden scene just through illustration ourselves. So you're going to come into Illustrator and you're going to open up New File. And in this one, under the presets, we're going to go ahead and we're going to name it your last name _ lesson 2. You're going to change your width and your height to 8 inches, and you can change your from pixels to inches right here, but 8 inches. Orientation doesn't matter because it's a square, and we only need one artboard today. So hit create. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off by drawing a basic shape. We're going to create a carrot. So we're going to grab our ellipse tool. And I want you to draw an oval like this. Now, the size itself doesn't really matter. We can size it again in a minute. Okay, so first you're just going to make the shape itself. And we're going to change the color. So we're going to grab our selection tool, which is right here. Make sure your object's still selected. And we're going to change it to orange. But I'm going to zoom in my screen so that you can see what I'm doing a little easier. One of the shortcuts that's going to help you out a lot is Control+, which will zoom you in, Control-, which will zoom you out, and Control-0, which will fit you back into your artboard. So I'm going to do Control+ and hit that a couple times so that here is my carrot. And I'm going to change the fill color right here to one of the basic oranges. So just go ahead and pick one of the swatches that's a basic orange. And then to change your stroke color, we want no stroke around this. So you're going to click on this little box right here and change it to no stroke. You can now see that you have a little orange oval, but we need to turn this into a carrot shape. So I'm going to go ahead and select it again. And remember to deselect anything, you just use your selection tool and click anywhere else on your page. And this time we're going to use the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool is going to allow you to adjust your anchor points and segments. So we're going to click on this white arrow and we're going to adjust the 2 side anchor points. So you're going to click on it and you simply drag it up. And we're going to flatten out the top a little bit and make the bottom a little pointier. So then you do it on the other side as well. And drag it up, and now we have like a basic carrot shape. Okay, now I'm going to grab my selection tool and go down and select somewhere else on the screen. So now you can see your carrot. Now, if at some point you decide you don't like the way your carrot looks, you can always come back with this direct selection tool again and click on it and make any more adjustments to it that you would like. But what we're going to do now is we're going to add some basic little lines to it just to give it a little bit of texture. So you're going to grab your pencil tool, which is right here. And you want to flip your fill color and your stroke color right down here. We're going to flip those just by pressing this little swap arrow. And then I'm going to come over to this stroke on my properties panel and I'm going to choose a darker shade of orange. So I'm going to pick this orange right here. And then using that pencil tool, I'm just going to come in and kind of draw some lines to give it a little bit of texture to it. We also need to draw some stems on it. So I'm going to change my stroke color. Well, first of all, if I change my stroke color right now, I already have this stroke selected. It's going to change that stroke. So I want to deselect what I'm working on. I'm going to grab my pencil tool again, and now I'm going to change my stroke color to a green. And then I'm going to come up here with my pencil tool, and it doesn't matter if it overlaps or not. And we're going to draw some lines. Now, if you draw a line and you connect back with your regular path, with your original path, it's going to automatically reconnect it. So it's easier if you just draw them as pieces And then you can come in with your selection tool and move them and overlap them after the fact. To get them to line up a little bit better, okay? And go ahead and do that. Draw yourself a couple different stems. And again, move them exactly where I want them to be. And I'll do one more. And again, move my little paths in the way I want them. Okay. Now, the problem is that our stems are coming out of the front of the carrot. We want them to kind of be hidden behind it. So let's talk about layers for 1 second. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open up my layers panel, and you're going to see what's called layer 1. And I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Click on the word layer 1, and you can change it. It'll highlight in blue, and I'm going to call it carrots. And hit enter. Now, if I create multiple layers, I know what's in this layer, and I can keep it very specific to the different areas. This comes in handy just for organizational skills. You'll also notice that there's a little blue box right here. If I use my selection tool and select it, my bounding box and my path are both blue, and it'll do that for any of the things that are in this layer. When we create a new layer, I'll show you again, but that color will change, and so you can tell by selecting on something when you're in an entire project which one it's in just because of that. Okay, so now I can do the little drop down here, and you can see every path that I created. Now I want these little branches to be in the back, so I'm going to click on the top one. I'm going to press and hold shift and go to the bottom little branch that I have, which is right here. And then I just click on it, hold, and drag it down to the bottom so that they go behind what I've already done. So now they look like they're coming out of the back of the carrot. And I'm going to close this little layer, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see my whole thing. And I'm going to click on this. I'm going to drag over it with my selection tool and right click. And I'm going to turn this into a group. Now, that makes it easier. I can do this with it. I can move it around. It's all one piece. If I unselect and reselect, it selects it in one piece. And it also puts it into a group right here. Now, I can always go on it and right click and ungroup it, and it'll turn it back into individual sublayers. But for now, let's go ahead and keep it as a group. Okay, so this is our first step. I'm just going to pull it up here and out of the way, and I'm going to do Control-0 just to have my entire screen back on. And we're going to make a little planter box to put our carrots in. So I want you to go to your tools and grab your rectangle tool. And you're going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to draw mine about that big. Okay, it doesn't have to be a specific size. We're going to fit multiple things across the screen. We can always resize as we need. Now, you're going to come up to your fill box and you're going to pick a color, whatever color you want your box to be. And I'm going to go kind of like a tealy color. Now, for this, what we're going to do is we want it to actually look like a planter. So we're going to adjust the shape slightly. Again, you can do it through the direct select tool, but then you're going to be adjusting both sides and you have to keep them the same. You can also do it through these little circles right here. What this is going to do is if you pull them, it's going to round your corners. Again, not exactly what we want it to do. So with it being selected, we're going to go up to Effect and Warp. And we're going to choose Bulge. Effect, Warp, and Bulge. And what it's going to do is it's going to bulge that shape for us. It's going to create that shape for us. But we're going to tell it exactly what we want it to do. And we want the bend to be at -15%. because we want it to bulge in. And we want to change the vertical to -7. Again, make sure you have this preview going right here so you can see exactly what you're doing. And now I'm going to hit OK. Now you can see that it has this nice kind of curve to it. We can, again, though, if we're not completely happy with it, we can go up and grab our selection tool and we can shrink it down. We can make it bigger. You can move it, whatever you need to do to it. So I went ahead. I didn't like how tall mine was. I want to shrink it down a little bit. If you wanted to make it bigger, you can. If you want to keep the same aspect ratio but make it bigger or smaller, remember to press and hold Shift. Now we need to move this carrot into it. Again, you can see I still have my layers open. We now have that rectangle planter right here, and we still have our carrot as a group. So I'm just going to select the carrot. I'm going to bring it down here, but I want to downsize my carrot just a little bit because it looks kind of big for that planter. So I'm going to size it just slightly. Kind of move it to where I want it. So the carrot's sticking up a little bit. And I want to make multiple copies of it. And I want to keep them on the same angle. So I'm going to press and hold. I'm going to press and click on the carrot itself. And then I'm going to do Alt and Shift and hold those. And I'm going to drag it to my right. And I'm going to do that same step again. I'm going to do that same step again. So now I have 4 little carrots in there. Depending on the size of your planter, maybe you can only fit 3 carrots, maybe you can fit 5 carrots. It's up to you. Now you can see over in my layers, I now have 4 little carrots as sublayers and groups, and then I have my little rectangle box. Okay, I'm going to close the little arrow next to it. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to lock this layer so that we don't mess it up in any way or change anything to it or add to it. We want it just to stay like this. So right here, I'm going to click the little lock. And now I'm going to create a tree to go next to it. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. So right here, you're going to do the square with the plus sign at the bottom of your layers panel. And I'm going to double click on the word layer and I'm going to change this to tree. Now, like I said earlier, remember our bounding box was blue. Now for our tree, our bounding box and all of this selections are going to be red. Okay, so let's create a little basic tree. So we're going to grab our ellipse tool. And I'm going to create a circle. So remember to press and hold Shift and draw your circle out. I'm going to change to my selection tool. I'm going to raise it up just a little bit right here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change my fill to a nice dark green. I'm then going to draw another small circle on top of it, just to give it kind of a little depth, and move that circle around using my selection tool. And I'm going to change it to a shade lighter of green. Okay, so it kind of looks like a piece of bubble gum. Okay, we need it to have a way to stand. So we're going to grab our rectangle tool. And you can either draw it or change your fill first. I'll go ahead and change my fill first. I'm going to do a nice brown. And I'm going to draw it a nice little skinny line right there and kind of move it to center it. And there it is. And again, what's the problem? Our tree is in front of the actual leaves. So I'm going to do the drop down in my layers panel. I'm going to grab that rectangle and I'm just going to pull it down. Now make sure you don't try and pull it down too far because then you're going into the next layer. So I'm going to pull that sub layer down right below my ellipses and now it's behind it. Okay, we need to plant it in a pot. So we're going to draw a rectangle. You can make your pot any color you want it to be. And we're going to do the same thing we did to the planter, but in the opposite direction. So effect and warp and bulge. But this time we want to bulge at 25%, not negative, just regular 25%. And then on the vertical, we want to do negative 25. It's going to give it kind of a nice pot shape. And again, if you don't like the color, you can always come over here and change your fill color at any time. I'm going to go purple. Okay. So now you have your nice little tree. Again, we're going to go ahead and turn this into a group. So I'm going to use my selection tool. I'm going to draw all the way across. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're not going to turn it into a group yet. We need to add one more thing to it. We're going to put some flowers on our tree. So we're going to go to our polygon tool. And we're going to create a 6-sided polygon. So we're just going to click on here and make sure it's 6 sides. And hit OK. And it's going to create this. And then you're going to pick out what color you want your flowers to be. I'm going to do my flowers in a very pale kind of purple to match the pot. So I'm going to actually come over on my toolbar and I'm going to select my fill color here and double click on it. Now I can pick the exact color I want it to be. I want to go pretty pale. There we go. Okay, and we want to do the easy way of making this look like a flower. So we're going to go to Effect and Distort and Transform and Pucker and Bloat. And then change your percentage to 50%. And as long as your preview's on, you can see you have this nice little flower here, and hit OK. And on top of that, I'm going to draw a little circle so that we have a center to our flower. So I'm going to press and hold Shift and draw my circle. And I can always grab my selection tool and move it to where I need it and change the color of it. I'm going to actually change my color to match this pot so I can show you one more thing, but you can change the center to whatever color you want. Now, if we're working on something like this and I want this color, I want a color from somewhere else in my image, all I have to do is come over here and grab this little eyedropper and click on it and click on the color that I want to select. Now, it will duplicate whatever it is. So if it was purple with a black outline and I use the eyedropper, it'll put purple with a black outline up here, and then I could simply turn off the black outline if I didn't want it. Okay, so it's going to duplicate whatever I have. So now I need to size this so I can fit them on the tree. So I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to select over both of them. And I'm going to click and I'm going to drag these down to make them smaller. And I want about this size. And then I can put it on my tree. And then I can press and hold, I click my flower, press and hold Alt, and I can drag it and make copies. And I just keep doing that over and over again until I get the number of flowers that I want. Okay, so I just added 5 to it. Okay, now something I want to show you. So you can work in what's called isolation mode. So if we have this, I'm going to go ahead and group all of this together. So I'm going to select over the entire thing and right click and group it. So now if I select it, I select the entire thing as one piece. But what if I only want to work on one little part of it? So I can double click and you can see the rest of my stuff kind of got grayed out. And I ended up with this gray bar across the top. And it says tree, it says group. Now, you can double click on it again and go all the way down to this one little circle. So if I wanted to change this one little circle to a different color or change the shape of it a little bit, I am now working with just that individually without breaking up that entire group. You will find that as you're working, even if you don't have things grouped, you'll accidentally at some point double click on something and it'll gray out everything except for one aspect, which is completely fine. It doesn't hurt anything. It's just saying you're in that isolation mode and it won't let you do anything to anything else. To get out of it, you just have to come up here and click the back arrow twice or however many times you double clicked into that. So now we're back in normal mode. So again, if I double clicked on something, even by accident, it sends me into isolation mode. I couldn't do anything over here to anything else. So I have to go out of isolation mode. Okay, so now I'm going to open up this panel and I'm going to go ahead. You can see my tree is here. It's all in one group. I'm going to go ahead and lock that one as well. Now, I want to put a picket fence in my background. And I want it to go all the way across, and I don't want these things to be in my way for the moment because I can move them where I want them when I'm done. So I'm going to close both of these layers. You close them just by clicking on the little eyes. And I'm going to create a brand new layer, the square with the plus sign, and I'm going to call this background. Now, I'm going to create a sky, I'm going to create ground, and I want to create a picket fence so that it looks like we're actually in the garden. So the easy way to do all these is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to create my sky first. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the top corner. I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to make a great big square over my box and I'm going to change it to a shade of blue. And I'm going to go kind of a light blue. There we go. Now, next, I want to create the grass. So I'm going to grab my selection tool. By the way, just take a quick look at this. You can see now I'm on a new layer. My bounding box is now green. Okay, I'm going to click on a new layer. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to start right here and I'm going to draw across and this is going to be my grassy area. So I can change the fill to a nice shade of green. Grab my selection tool. There we go. So now we have a nice background. So let's add a picket fence to it. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this little drop down right here, and I'm going to go ahead and lock my rectangles, my grass and my sky. That way when I'm drawing on it, I don't accidentally click on them and move them. So you can lock sub layers and layers. So it's up to you which ones you want to do. Okay. Next, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to draw me a little piece of fence. This can be, you can do a white picket fence, you can do a yellow picket fence, whatever you want to do. I'll go ahead and do a white picket fence so it'll show up nice and bright against these colors. And I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. There we go, so we can see what we're doing. Now, I want to angle this at the top so it's actually a picket. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your pen tool and you're going to click right here in the middle of this top path. And it just says a shape expanded across the top of my screen. It's because I added an extra anchor point. I can then take that direct selection tool and click on that new anchor point that I just created, and I can drag it up and create that picket. Okay, I'm going to close my layer panel so we can see everything a little bit better. I'm going to go to my selection tool, and you don't have to space these perfectly. But what we're going to do is we're just going to press and hold Alt, and we're going to drag some of these out. And if they don't line up perfectly, that's fine. I'm going to show you a faster way of doing it. So I'm kind of making sure that none of mine line up perfectly so that I can show you how this works. We're going to use the Align tool. Now, I want mine to stay kind of close together, so I'm going to add quite a few of these. Actually, I might move them over and add a few more in. So just go ahead and press your Alt key. Get more of these posts in here, the amount of posts that you like. Some of my posts have great big gaps. I know I'm not going to leave them that big a gap, so I'm just going to move those and add some extra ones in. But again, if these sizes aren't exactly the same, it's okay. Just get them kind of close. I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to select over all of them. Since I locked the background, it's not picking those up. It's just going to pick up my board. And you need to find your Align tool. So your align tools are right in your properties panel right over here. And the three little dots below them are going to open them up even further. Now we want them first to line up across the bottom. So you're going to use this one right here, which is a vertical align bottom. And it's going to put them all flat on the bottom. Then we want them to have the same spacing in between them, and we want them to space out in this distance. So you're going to use this one right here, which is horizontal distribute left. And it's going to space them all evenly for us. Okay, now using the selection tool, I'm just going to kind of move them over here and kind of move them up a little bit. Leave a little gate area over here. If you don't want the gate area, if you want them to go all the way across, feel free to do that. You can add a couple more, or you can even, if it's too tall or too short, you can make adjustments to it here, or you could widen it here if you're okay with your panels being a little bit wider. Okay, so I'm going to leave it just like this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the board that goes all the way across them. So I'm just going to grab my rectangular tool and I'm going to draw a white board all the way across them and line it up. Okay, so there's my little picket fence, and now I can select them all. And again, I can group them. And I can open up my layers, and now I can unlock the grass and the sky and lock them all as one layer together. And I can open up the other two, and you can see that my tree and my carrots are now behind my background. And I want my background to be in the very back. So I'm just going to click on that layer and I'm going to drag it all the way to the bottom. And there's my image in front of it. Now I'm going to do Control-0 to get back out, and we're going to add one more thing. We're going to add a birdhouse. So I'm going to click on my tree layer and create a new layer, and I'm going to call it birdhouse. Open it up. And we're going to build a little birdhouse to put here. So we're going to grab our rectangle tool, and you can pick any color you want for your birdhouse. I'm going to go with a bright orange. And with the rectangle tool, we're going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to move mine up a little bit more. There we go. And on top of that, we're going to draw a little circle for the birds to go in. So I'm going to press and hold Shift and draw a little circle, kind of center that. There we go, and change the fill color again to something a little bit darker so it looks like it's shading where it's going in. And then I'm going to use my poly tool. I'm going to click on here. I'm going to down it to 3 sides so I get a triangle and hit OK. Size doesn't matter because we can move it up to the birdhouse and we can size it right here. So we have the roof on the birdhouse. And now we just need the pole for the birdhouse. So grab your rectangle tool and make it a pole. And again, move the pole to the back. And there's your little birdhouse. And you can select it all, right click and group it. Now we're going to unlock all but the background. I know my background's where I want it. Now I can move, I can move my garden. Now remember that we did not group the container with the carrot, so you're going to have to select them all together. And then you can kind of move them where you want. And if you want them to go in front of the pot, you simply move the carrots in front of the tree layer. And there we go. So now you've created a little garden image. We used isolation. We talked about isolation mode. We've grouped objects. We've aligned objects. I showed you how to hide items and lock them in the layers. And we also talked about using your selection tools. Okay, so what you're going to do is go ahead and go up to File and save this as an Illustrator file. And again, when this screen pops up, it's all default, so hit OK. And then you're going to go to File and Save As, and we're going to save this as a PDF, and that'll be the file that you are submitting to me. So it's last name, lesson 2 PDF, and hit Save again. Default, so go ahead and hit Save. And now you're ready to turn it in. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email and I'll try and answer them for you.